You know, there's a fruit native to the United States that's hiding a pretty incredible secret. A fruit that was once, believe it or not, a cornerstone of life on this continent, a vital source of sweetness and survival. But today, it's basically a ghost in our own backyard. So today, we're going on a hunt for America's sweetest secret, the American persimmon.
I want you to imagine a flavor so intensely sweet, it just puts candy to shame. And we're not talking about a simple, sugary sweetness. No, this is rich and complex. People often say it's like a perfect mix of apricot and honey, with these deep, almost rum-like undertones. It's the kind of flavor that tastes ancient and wild, something totally different from the one-note sweetness we're so used to finding in a grocery store.
And the texture? Well, it's just as unique. Forget about a crisp bite. A perfectly ripe American persimmon is essentially a delicate bag of jam. Seriously, the skin is so thin it can barely hold in this luscious, amber-colored pulp. You don't really bite into it so much as you scoop it out. It's a texture that just melts on your tongue.
Now, here's the craziest part. This tree isn't some rare, exotic thing from a faraway land. It grows wild across a huge chunk of the United States. It's probably in a ditch somewhere or at the edge of a forest, maybe even within a few miles of your house right now. And yet, most of us have never even heard of it. In fact, a lot of city planners actually consider it a nuisance, a trash tree that just drops fruit and stains the sidewalk.
So what is this forgotten culinary treasure? It's the American persimmon, the true ghost of our culinary past. This is a fruit that tells a story about what we ate before the supply chain told us what to eat, a story of what the land itself can provide. I think it's about time we reintroduced ourselves. Okay, so to really get why it's such a tragedy that this fruit disappeared, you have to understand its incredible history. This wasn't just any old fruit. For centuries, it was absolutely revered.
So its scientific name, Diospyros virginiana, literally translates from Greek to divine fruit or fruit of the gods. How cool is that? But the common name we use, persimmon, that actually comes from the Powhatan language. They called it pushaman, which means dried fruit, and that's a huge clue to just how important it was for indigenous tribes.
I mean, for thousands of years, this was a legit survival strategy. Indigenous tribes would mash the pulp into these dense loaves of persimmon bread to get them through the winter. When European settlers showed up, they quickly learned about its dual nature. Fast forward to the Civil War, and its roasted seeds were even used as a coffee substitute by Confederate soldiers. But then, the 20th century supermarket came along, and this vital fruit was all but forgotten.
You know Captain John Smith of Jamestown? He absolutely nailed the persimmon's split personality way back in 1612. Biting into an unripe one is an experience you will not forget. But when it's perfectly ripe, like he wrote, it's as delicious as an apricot. And honestly, I think that's an understatement.
All right, so this is the big question, right? If this fruit is so spectacular and was so important for so long, why on earth did it just vanish? Well, the answer tells you a lot about the food system we all rely on today. See, our whole industrial food system is built on one single guiding principle: durability. For a piece of fruit to get from a farm in California to a lunchbox in Ohio, it has to be tough. It's got to be harvested while it's still hard and able to withstand being tossed around, stacked high, and trucked for thousands of miles without turning to mush. This obsession with durability gave us things like the red delicious apple, a fruit that was basically bred for thick skin and a long shelf life, while sacrificing pretty much all of its flavor.
And the American persimmon? Oh, it is the ultimate anti-commodity. It fails the durability test in every possible way. When it's perfectly ripe and delicious, it is, as we said, a fragile bag of jelly. You can't ship it. You can't pile it up in a bin. If you stack just 3 of them on top of each other, the one on the bottom is going to burst. With a shelf life of maybe 48 hours tops, it's just completely incompatible with our modern world.
So, because the native persimmon couldn't be shipped, it got replaced. The persimmons you see in grocery stores today, those are usually the fuyu, an Asian variety. It's bred to be picked rock hard and shipped all over the world, so you can eat it crunchy almost like an apple. But in trading for that convenience, we lost that deep, complex, apricot honey flavor of our own wild American variety.
And here's the thing. When we lost the American persimmon, it wasn't just about flavor. We actually lost a superfood. We basically walked away from one of the most nutritionally potent fruits in all of North America. The numbers here are just staggering.
You know, we all grew up with that saying, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. We think of the apple as the gold standard for a healthy fruit. It's the benchmark, right? But
let's actually put that to the test. Let's compare 100 grams of a regular apple to 100 grams of American persimmon.
Okay, first up, vitamin C. An apple has about 4.6 milligrams. The American persimmon, a whopping 66 milligrams. That's over 70% of your daily value in just a small handful, easily rivaling citrus fruits. It's not even in the same league.
All right, now let's talk about a really crucial mineral, iron. In that same 100 grams, the American persimmon gives you about 2.5 milligrams of iron. For a fruit, that is a ton. That makes it an incredibly important source of this blood-building mineral, especially for people who don't eat meat.
And the apple? You're looking at a tiny 0.1 milligrams. That is 25 times less iron than the native persimmon. This is the kind of nutrition we unknowingly just left behind on the forest floor. Okay, but this story doesn't have to be a sad one. This isn't just a eulogy for a lost fruit. It's time to bring the fruit of the gods back to the American backyard. So let's talk about how you can actually find this tree in the wild, and even better, how you can grow one yourself.
The great news is, this tree is actually pretty easy to spot once you know what to look for. The bark is its most famous feature. It's dark and broken into these thick, blocky squares that look just like alligator skin. The fruits are usually between the size of a nickel and a golf ball, and they always have this little four-leaf woody hat on top, which is called a calyx. Now, the number one most important rule, only eat them when they are ridiculously soft, like a water balloon, and have already fallen from the tree. That's how you know they're truly ready.
And here's the science behind that warning from Captain John Smith. That torment he was talking about, it's caused by compounds called tannins. Unripe persimmons are loaded with them. It's the tree's defense mechanism to stop animals from eating the fruit before the seeds are ready. When you bite into one, those tannins instantly bind to the proteins in your saliva, and it creates this intensely dry, buzzy, pucker-up sensation that I promise you will never, ever forget. Now, if you want to grow one, and you totally should, my biggest piece of advice is don't just plant a seed. See, persimmon trees are usually either male or female, so you could wait a whole decade just to find out you have a male tree that's never going to make fruit. Instead, go to a specialized nursery like these ones. They sell grafted female trees of amazing varieties, which guarantees you'll get large, delicious fruit. And a quick pro tip, order in the winter because the best ones sell out long before spring ever arrives.
So when your tree finally arrives, you're going to see this long, thick root that kind of looks like a big carrot. That's the taproot, and it is super important for the tree's survival, but it's also really sensitive. You need to dig a hole that's deep enough so that taproot can go straight down without bending or breaking. Also, look for the bumpy scar on the trunk. That's the graft union, and make sure you keep it a couple of inches above the soil line. Water it really well its first summer, and after that, just let it be. It's a survivor.
You know, the American persimmon is such a powerful reminder that the most delicious, nutritious, and meaningful foods aren't always the ones that come in a plastic clamshell. For way too long, we've let the demands of the supply chain dictate what we eat. We accepted it because, hey, it was easy, but we don't have to settle for durability over delight.
Bringing back a fruit like the persimmon, it's about more than just taste. It's about reclaiming a connection to our landscape and our own history. And it leaves us with a really critical question to think about every time we walk into a grocery store. The industrial food system gave us incredible convenience and year-round availability for sure. But what did we have to give up to get it? What other ghosts are hiding out there in our forests just waiting to be rediscovered?